We started off this work week under plenty of sunshine, and across the high desert, there's just no rain in sight. Now, today was a real kickoff of our next warming trend, and already temperatures are warming up enough to put us in that seasonable range. We stay there for another day, but the warming trend really doesn't stop until we get into this Memorial Day week. And hey, everyone, I'm Darrell Winninger, the Chief Meteorologist at Central Oregon Daily News, and we are about to take a deep dive into your most reliable forecast. Look at the changes that have already happened through the beginning of this week, what changes happen next, and how those changes are really going to impact us as we go forward through the next several days. So let's kick this off with cameras across Central Oregon. I'm going to show you several cameras, starting off with just this view from the Cascades all the way through Pine Mountain and even Prineville Reservoir. There are some clouds over the Cascades. There's no rain in sight, and many of us have been sitting under plenty of sunshine. But a quick recap for you just to show you what's going on. I should say some headlines for you instead of a recap. Sunshine and warming are really the big theme of our forecast as we go forward through the next couple of days. Each day will bring some afternoon clouds, and each day brings continued warming. So if we're going from seasonal to 80s later this week, and it's going to stay very dry. A couple of our forecast models do show the low chance of a few showers or a couple of sprinkles, but I'm just not buying it because it's so dry across Central Oregon. I think if any showers do fall, a lot of that is going to become virga, evaporating before it reaches the surface, and breezy afternoons are expected. Now, by the time we get to Wednesday and Thursday, we'll be sitting more fully under that ridge of high pressure that's way out over the Pacific Ocean, and as that happens, we have even more stability. So we're going back down to more sunshine and not much in the way of winds, definitely no rain in sight, but that gradual heating continues until a very weak system rolls through the day before Memorial Day. So we're talking Saturday night going into Sunday, and at best, some light showers are going to be possible, but I really think it's going to be very similar to the last couple of systems that have rolled through the high desert, where very dry conditions persist, winds get a little breezy, and then that front pushes through. So as of right now, there is just dry, there's no rain in sight, and so we have dry conditions across the high desert. Several of these cameras actually showing some shadows on the ground, indicative of the sunshine that we have been seeing throughout Central Oregon. And when we look into the higher elevations, even at elevation, we have dry roads and tons of sunshine, but there are some clouds rolling through the Cascades between Sandy Ann Pass and Willamette Pass, so just pretty much outside of the few cameras that we have through the Cascades. These clouds have been impacting Central Oregon, but just no precipitation at all. There have been a few specks of green showing up on radar. I just don't think any of that's actually reaching the ground. Winds have been breezy for many of us, and as we go forward through the rest of this evening, those winds taper off. But also, what we have been seeing is where we've been getting this cloud cover and adding in the breeze, it feels a little cooler than it actually is. Either way, though, temperatures continue to warm, and by tomorrow, we're going to be warming even more. Now, tomorrow does bring some additional cloud cover through the afternoon, but still keeping it dry, with temperatures going from the 60s today into the lower to mid 70s tomorrow, and a few 60s left on the map. So ultimately, we are expecting this warming trend to take us through the 70s and into the 80s, just not until we get to later in the work week. So that brings us to a different satellite imagery. This is a loop, and it's infrared satellite. Earlier I was showing you the blend of visible and infrared satellite imagery, and it had radar. We just weren't seeing anything on radar. This is just infrared, and with infrared satellite imagery, the sensors on the satellite focus on the color of the top of the clouds. The coldest color in that pixel is what it shows, and that helps us understand just how tall the clouds are, and it shows us the tallest part of the cloud. And over Central Oregon, we have very low clouds. There's no precipitation in sight, and those isobars, those equal lines of pressure or lines of constant pressure, are pretty spread apart. It's not definitely not a light breeze, and definitely not looking at steep gradients when it comes to pressure heights. But for the most part, this is indicative of winds that are just breezy at times. Now, when we look at the bigger picture, there is a ridge of high pressure out over the Pacific Ocean. There's some moisture coming around the northern edge of that. The difference is that we're just not going to catch too much of that. That's going to go right into Canada and bring precipitation to the highest latitudes of Washington and going way into BC. Now, one thing that I did want to point out with this is that I mentioned that this enhancement really pulls out the tall clouds, and we can see that way out over Minnesota, Nebraska, and getting into the Midwest. And that's because they are dealing with a bout of severe weather. In fact, several tornado watches have been issued in that area with several severe thunderstorm warnings. We're not really tracking that because that is on the other side of the Cascades, but if you have friends, family, or even just loved ones in that area, that's what they're dealing with today. And that's part of a system that rolled through here this weekend. We're on the back side of that and sitting under this ridge of high pressure, but high pressure typically does a couple things. It brings what I refer to as the 3 S's of high pressure. You have sunshine, that's definitely on the way, and you have subsidence. Subsidence is the atmosphere pushing down on the surface and not really letting too much cloud development happen. And then you have stability, and stability is the lack of convection. Now, there is still technically going to be some convection, it's just not strong enough for any thunderstorm development. And so with those 3 S's in place during the next several days, we just have temperatures warming up even more. Now, there is going to be enough instability for clouds to form, just not enough for them to really develop into thunderstorms. And at the moment, we have pretty dry air sitting over central Oregon and not much in the way of precipitation anywhere near us. So your forecast model, and this is the high resolution forecast model, you can also see some wind barbs in there, and those streamlines are just showing direction and a little bit of magnitude in there. But they taper off through this evening. After sunset, we come back down to a gentle breeze across the high desert, and it does eventually swing around to the south, but in reality, it calms down. And so there's no direction when you have no wind speed. But that's going to be during the early morning hours. And through Tuesday afternoon, some clouds are expected, still dry. And then through the day, Tuesday night going into Wednesday, we start to clear out. So Wednesday starts with some clouds and then ends up with more sunshine than cloud cover. And really, Wednesday and Thursday, we're expecting more sunshine than cloud cover, and mostly just a light breeze. Now, let's look at some current conditions. Relative humidity measured in percentages is dry, not critically dry for fire weather conditions, but dry nevertheless. We have 20s and some teens on the map. Remember, all in percentages. The Sisters is at 41%. That's the highest number on the map there. When it comes to high temperatures, today we topped out in the 60s with 73 degrees in Warm Springs. Currently, we have a lot of 60s, 71 in Warm Springs and 57 in Sisters. So those are your two outliers, Sisters and Warm Springs. But we're still sitting with a 6 to 12 degrees warm up from just 24 hours ago. And this warming trend, yeah, it is not over. In fact, tomorrow we go from 60s with a few 70s to 70s with a few 60s. Of course, that's after dipping down into the 30s with a few 20s tonight. So it's getting cold. We start off clear. Wind speeds pick up during the afternoon. Temperatures warm a little bit more, and that warming trend really doesn't stop. It's actually going to be amplified because of that ridge of high pressure building into the Pacific Northwest. So Tuesday we have the chilly start, some PM clouds and pleasantly warmer. Highs in the 70s with some 60s possible. By Wednesday, most of us peak in the 70s by the afternoon. Some in and out clouds are still expected, and winds still breezy at times. But then by Thursday, remember, Wednesday and Thursday is when we catch more sunshine than cloud cover, that break between waves of moisture that are bringing the in and out clouds, just no precipitation. Highs mostly in the 70s, a few 80s possible. And sitting under that sunshine, it's going to feel very nice. And we are not looking at much at all in the way of precipitation between now and Thursday at 11 p.m. In fact, you could even extend that even further. It's not until this weekend, Saturday night going into Sunday, that brings our best chance of rain, and it's not even going to be a good chance of rain. In fact, most of us stay dry. But between now and then, temperatures warm out of the 60s through the 70s and into the lower to mid 80s before that next system rolls in. So let's look at your forecast model. This is not the high resolution one. It's very close to it. It shows similar conditions. It's just goes out a little bit further. And when you add time down the road, you take away some of the resolution in order to get those forecast models to come out when they're supposed to. And after this one, I'll show you a different one that uses different model physics, and it goes even further. So we are looking at that weak trough moving through the area, and clouds thin out tonight. By tomorrow, some in and out cover, staying dry. By Wednesday, clearing through the day. And we're entering that area when we're looking at more sunshine than cloud cover because of that ridge of high pressure. And so Thursday, gorgeous conditions, warming even more and staying extremely dry. By Friday, we're still dry and still warming. So between now and 11 p.m. Thursday, there's not much that we're looking at. There are a few specks where we have a little bit of very transparent green, and that means that this specific forecast model is calling for a few sprinkles. I'm just not buying it. And then by Sunday at 5 p.m., this is as that next system is rolling through, it looks like some showers are going to be possible. So that'll be the best chance of rain. Sorry, I accidentally went backwards instead of forward. And that's going to be Saturday night through Sunday. So wind gusts so far this afternoon above 20 miles per hour for many of us, and that's where we're sitting right now. Actual gusts are between 15 and 25 miles per hour. Wind speeds alone are between 5 and 15, really 10 and 16 miles per hour with a couple of outliers. We do have 9 miles per hour in Sun River and La Pine. So everything to the left of that white line, that now line, is observed. Everything to the right is forecast, and it does show we are in the peak of winds becoming breezy for many of us, just not quite everybody. Tonight, that tapers off. Winds swing around to the south. We get back down to a gentle breeze, and then through Tuesday, it's going to, instead of 10 to 20 miles per hour, it's going to be more 5 to 15 miles per hour, gusting up to 20 again. And Wednesday, just breezy at times. That's the trend that we're going into. Instead of breezy all day, sometimes where we have calm winds and wind speeds picking up during the afternoon and evening hours. So for tonight, expect 30s with a few 20s. Many of us dip to near and below freezing, just not quite everybody. And what little cloud cover we have thins out. By Tuesday, we're talking 70s with a few 60s possible. So that continues our warming trend. It keeps us in a seasonable range, but brings us to near and above average for this time of the year. And then the warming trend continues through Wednesday, through Thursday. By Friday and Saturday, we're topping out in the 80s. In fact, Thursday, a few 80s are going to be possible. But then Sunday brings that next system. Low chance of rain, but there is a chance of some showers, just like the last several systems. Not everybody getting wet. Some of us only catching a few sprinkles. And then by Memorial Day on Monday, close to average for this time of the year, just not quite there, and clearing with winds that are still going to be breezy at times. So a quick look at that recap, your weather headlines for this Monday, May 18th. Plenty of sunshine is expected. It is staying dry. With cold starts, warmer days are in the forecast. So we're actually looking at a very broad diurnal range, which means it's a big range between the overnight low and the daytime high. And we're going from 30s to 70s, then 30s and 40s into the 80s. So we are expecting that warming trend with both our overnight lows and our daytime highs. But because of this ridge of high pressure and the very dry conditions, we're looking at that huge range. So there's no rain in sight until we get to the weekend, and we're pretty much staying stable because of that ridge of high pressure. One more look at your satellite and radar, and there's just not much to talk about. There have been a few specks of green showing up through the Cascades, not even all of that reaching the ground, and really across the state, not seeing too much at all. Now, further up into Washington, that's where there have been a few cells that have been producing a little bit of lightning, so a couple of light thunderstorms, but all of that staying pretty far away from central Oregon. And going forward through the next several days, we're staying pretty dry. That is the latest in weather. Join us tonight on Central Oregon Daily News with the latest headlines and your most reliable forecasts. See you then.